Have you ever wondered what truly matters in life as you grow older? What if I told you that aging is not just about decline, but about discovering profound truths that can transform the way you live? At 81, I moved into a nursing home, expecting it to be a place of quiet solitude, a slow retreat from the life I once knew. But after a year, I realized that aging is full of surprises. Some were painful, others were enlightening, and a few completely changed the way I perceive life. In this video, I'll share 7 powerful lessons I've learned that might challenge your views on growing older and perhaps even shift the way you approach your own journey of aging. These insights are not just from my experience, but from countless conversations with those who have lived through the highs and lows of old age. Stay with me until the end, because the last lesson is the most profound one. It changed my life, and it might just change yours too. And if you find this video meaningful, please like, share, and subscribe to support our work in spreading wisdom on aging, mindfulness, and well-being. Lesson 1. Loneliness is a choice, not a sentence. When I first moved into the nursing home, I assumed loneliness was inevitable. My spouse had passed away, my children were busy with their own lives, and most of my old friends were either gone or too far away to visit. I prepared myself for long, quiet days, spent mostly in solitude. I believed that loneliness was something that happened to people like me, something beyond my control, a sentence handed down by life itself. But then I met Margaret. Margaret had no family nearby, yet she was one of the happiest people I had ever met. She had an energy about her that was contagious, and wherever she went, laughter seemed to follow. One day, over a shared meal, I asked her how she managed to be so joyful despite having no family around. She smiled and said something that changed my entire perspective. Happiness doesn't just show up at your door. You have to go out and find it. Margaret never waited for others to reach out to her. She knocked on doors, introduced herself to new residents, and made a habit of joining group activities. She treated every day as an opportunity to build connections, no matter how small. She joined a knitting circle, played cards with different groups, and never hesitated to strike up a conversation with someone sitting alone. Inspired by her, I decided to take a chance. Instead of staying in my room, hoping someone might drop by, I started making an effort to be part of the community. At first, it felt awkward. I was used to keeping to myself, and the thought of walking up to a group of strangers was intimidating. But I pushed through the discomfort. I greeted people in the hallway, joined a book club, and started sitting with different groups at mealtimes. Slowly, the loneliness that had once felt so overwhelming began to fade. I realized then that loneliness isn't about simply being alone. It's about feeling disconnected. It's easy to assume that others should be the ones to reach out to us, but the truth is, we have the power to build relationships ourselves. We can choose to sit in our rooms, waiting for visitors who may never come, or we can take the first step and create our own sense of belonging. Loneliness is not an unavoidable fate. It is a condition we can change. Connection is always possible, but it requires effort, courage, and a willingness to step outside our comfort zones. The choice is ours. Lesson 2, independence fades faster. If you let it. Aging doesn't take away independence overnight. It happens gradually in ways that may seem insignificant at first. Choosing the elevator instead of the stairs, asking someone to carry your groceries when you're still capable, or letting a loved one bring you a cup of coffee instead of getting up to make it yourself. These small choices accumulate, and before you realize it, the abilities you once took for granted begin to weaken. I saw this pattern play out firsthand with Richard, a man who had once been strong, independent, and capable. In his younger years, he prided himself on his self-sufficiency. He would fix things around the house, carry heavy bags without hesitation, and walk everywhere instead of driving short distances. But as he grew older, he began to make small concessions, accepting help when he didn't need it, avoiding activities that required effort, and gradually surrendering his independence. At first, it seemed harmless, but once he started depending on others for simple tasks, his physical and mental strength deteriorated at an alarming rate. The less he did for himself, the harder it became to do anything at all. Watching Richard's decline made me think deeply about my own choices. I made a commitment to myself. If I can do it, I will do it. No matter how small or mundane the action, pouring my own coffee, buttoning my own shirt, walking instead of taking a ride, I chose to do it myself. I recognized that every small effort was an investment in my independence, a way to keep my body and mind engaged. This mindset has made all the difference. The more I use my abilities, the longer I retain them. I've seen others around me take the path of least resistance, surrendering their independence in the name of convenience. But I've also seen those who fight to keep their autonomy, who push themselves daily, and they're the ones who remain active and engaged far longer than those who don't. Aging doesn't take away independence. You give it up by choosing convenience over effort. The human body and mind thrive on use. The moment we stop using our strength, our agility, and our problem-solving skills, they begin to fade. It's not about refusing help when it's truly needed, but about recognizing the power of effort and self-reliance. Small choices add up over time, and they determine how long we remain independent. Lesson 3: Health declines when routine disappears. In my time visiting nursing homes, I've observed a stark contrast between residents who remain vibrant and those who seem to wither away. The determining factor? Routine. Take George, for example. He was a retired teacher who carried the discipline of his profession into his later years. Every morning, he woke up at the same time, stretched a little, and then took a short walk before breakfast. He had a daily reading schedule, participated in community discussions, and even kept a small notebook where he wrote reflections. His days had purpose, structure, and predictability, which seemed to keep him mentally sharp and physically active. Then there were others, residents who had no set schedule, no activities to look forward to. Their days blurred together, often spent in passive activities like sitting in front of a television or aimlessly moving between their rooms and the common area. Without a structured day, they slowly became disengaged, their minds dulling and their bodies growing weaker. The lack of a routine didn't just affect their mental clarity, it also impacted their motivation to move, eat well, or interact with others. Seeing this, I made a conscious decision to adopt George's approach. I ensured that my own days had structure, even if I wasn't following a strict work schedule anymore. I committed to waking up at a set time, engaging in activities that stimulated my mind, reading, writing, or learning something new, and making sure I moved my body every day, even if just for a short walk. Most importantly, I maintained social connections, whether through phone calls, in-person visits, or engaging in small talk with neighbors. A structured routine is a powerful force that sustains both the body and mind. When we lose our sense of purpose, our well-being declines. Routine doesn't have to be rigid, but having a predictable rhythm to the day provides a foundation for continued growth, engagement, and health. Whether young or old, the lesson remains the same. Life flourishes with structure. Lesson 4: Your attitude shapes your experience. I once assumed that the happiest residents were the healthiest, but I was wrong. Some of the most joyful people had the most challenges: wheelchairs, memory loss, chronic pain. Yet their mindset made all the difference. Their joy wasn't rooted in perfect circumstances, but in how they chose to interpret their reality. Eleanor, an 86-year-old woman with severe arthritis, greeted everyone with a warm smile, as despite the pain that accompanied her every movement. When asked how she remains so cheerful, she said, "Happiness isn't about what happens to you, it's about how you see it." She focused on what she could still enjoy: the company of friends, the beauty of a sunrise, the simple pleasure of a cup of tea. Even on her worst days, she made an effort to appreciate the small joys that life still offered. Meanwhile, there were others in the same facility who were physically healthy but deeply unhappy. They constantly complained about what they had lost: youth, independence, the ability to do things they once took for granted. Their conversations revolved around regrets and disappointments, reinforcing their own suffering. The stark contrast between Eleanor and the others made me realize something profound. If you focus on what's missing, you will always feel lacking. But if you focus on what remains, you will find gratitude and joy. This shift in focus can transform your entire experience of life. I began noticing this pattern everywhere. Some people with chronic illnesses still radiated happiness, while others in good health were trapped in bitterness. The difference wasn't their circumstances, but their attitude toward them. Life inevitably brings loss and hardship, but our perspective determines whether we feel defeated or resilient. So, how can we train ourselves to adopt this mindset? Practice gratitude daily. Take a moment each day to reflect on what you still have rather than what you've lost. Even in difficult times, there's always something to appreciate. Reframe challenges. Instead of seeing limitations as obstacles, view them as opportunities to grow in patience, acceptance, and inner strength. Surround yourself with positivity. Engage with people who uplift and inspire you rather than those who dwell in negativity. Control your inner dialogue. Pay attention to your thoughts. Are they reinforcing lack and frustration, or are they focused on possibilities and appreciation? Your attitude shapes your experience. The way you choose to see life, especially in difficult moments, can determine whether you live with joy or despair. Lesson 5. Family visits are unpredictable, but friendships sustain you. I used to believe that family visits would be my primary source of happiness. When I first moved into the nursing home, I eagerly looked forward to each visit from my children and grandchildren, marking the days on my calendar and preparing stories to share. But as time passed, the visits became less frequent. Work, responsibilities, and distance made it harder for them to come. At first, I felt abandoned. The loneliness crept in, making me question my worth. Had I become an afterthought in their busy lives? Then I started paying closer attention to the people around me. I noticed that some residents who had frequent visits still seemed lonely, while others, who barely received any, were full of joy. One of them was Albert. His son only visited a few times a year, but you would never see him alone. Every morning he had coffee with a group of friends. In the afternoons, he played cards, laughing and chatting like a man with a full life. He didn't wait for family visits to bring him happiness, he created it himself. Inspired by Albert, I decided to shift my focus. Instead of counting the days between family visits, I started counting the moments of connection I made every day. I greeted the woman who sat alone by the window, and soon we became friends. I joined a book club where we shared not just stories from novels, but also from our own lives. Slowly, my world expanded, filled with the warmth of daily companionship. I realized that family will always love us, but they have their own lives to lead. I am not forgotten. I am simply part of a different rhythm now. The happiest people are not the ones who rely solely on their families, but the ones who cultivate meaningful friendships wherever they are. Family is important, but life doesn't stop when visits become rare. True happiness comes from the connections we build every day. Friendships fill the gaps, bringing laughter, comfort, and a sense of belonging that sustains us. Lesson 6. The past becomes more vivid, but the present still matters. As I age, I've noticed something peculiar. The past often seems clearer than the present. Memories from decades ago, faces, conversations, even the scent of a particular summer afternoon come rushing back with startling detail, while the events of yesterday fade into a blur. It's as if time rewinds itself in my mind, making old experiences feel more tangible than what happened just hours ago. I've seen this happen to others as well. Many older adults fall into the habit of living in their memories, revisiting the past so often that the present becomes secondary, even unimportant. There's comfort in nostalgia, but there's also a risk. When we immerse ourselves too deeply in what was, we may forget to cherish what still is. Take Frank, for example. At 89, he could recount his childhood mischief, the war years, and his first love with astonishing precision. He lived in his stories, but that was the problem. He only lived in them. Conversations with him felt like opening a history book, fascinating yet disconnected from the world around us. He rarely spoke about the present, rarely asked about the lives unfolding before him. Then there was Helen, 84, who also adored sharing old stories. She, too, could paint vivid pictures of her youth with words, bringing to life the dances, the laughter, and the heartaches of her younger days. But Helen was different. She never allowed nostalgia to overshadow her present reality. She once told me something that reshaped my thinking. I have more yesterdays than tomorrows, but today still counts. Helen understood a simple yet profound truth. While we may treasure our past, we must continue to make the most of the time we have left. She still learned new things, made new friends, and embraced each day with curiosity. Her stories weren't just a retreat into the past, but a bridge that connected her to the present. Nostalgia is a beautiful gift, a way to carry our history forward. But life is still happening, and every moment we spend reminiscing should not come at the cost of experiencing what is unfolding right now. There is a balance to be found. Cherish the past, honor it, but don't let it steal your present. Every day still holds the potential for joy, connection, and new stories to tell. Lesson 7. Small pleasures make a big difference. As we journey through life, the grand adventures and major milestones that once seemed so important begin to fade into memory. In their place, we find joy in the simple, everyday moments that bring warmth to our hearts. These small pleasures, often overlooked in our younger years, become the true sources of happiness in later life. A warm cup of coffee in the morning, the soothing melody of a favorite song, or the golden glow of the sun on your skin can hold more meaning than we ever imagined. Take Harold, for example. At 82 years old, he no longer seeks the excitement of big achievements or distant travels. Instead, he finds happiness in a simple ritual, offering butterscotch candies to visitors. It's not just about the candy, it's about connection. In sharing a sweet treat, he also shares a moment of warmth and kindness. What seems like a small gesture to others is for him a way of expressing joy, spreading it to those around him. I've come to understand the profound beauty in these everyday moments. The gentle sound of birds singing outside my window, a meaningful conversation with an old friend, or the refreshing feel of a cool breeze on my face, these are the things that make life rich and fulfilling. When I was younger, I might have taken these simple pleasures for granted, always looking ahead to the next big goal or accomplishment. But now, I realize that happiness was never in those grand pursuits, it was in the small joys all along. There's wisdom in slowing down and embracing the present. Life isn't measured by the number of extraordinary events we experience, but by the depth of the ordinary ones. The simple act of enjoying a meal, listening to a familiar tune, or watching the sky change colors at sunset can bring immense peace. The key is to be fully present, to truly savor each moment, rather than rushing past it in search of something greater. Happiness isn't found in big achievements or dramatic moments. It's in the small, everyday experiences, the ones we often overlook. A kind smile, a shared laugh, the warmth of a hug, these are the things that truly make life meaningful. Aging isn't just about the passage of time, it's about how we choose to navigate each stage of life. While physical changes are inevitable, our mindset and daily choices define our experience. Some people resign themselves to decline, believing that aging means losing purpose. Others take an active role, embracing the wisdom and opportunities that come with growing older. The happiest older adults aren't necessarily those with perfect health or a large family constantly surrounding them. Instead, they are the ones who stay engaged and connected. They nurture relationships, whether through friendships, community activities, or online interactions. Social connection keeps the mind and heart alive. Maintain their independence. Even with limitations, they adapt, finding ways to do what they love and take care of themselves as much as possible. Find joy in small moments. A sunset, a good book, or a conversation with a loved one can bring immense happiness. Embrace the present while honoring the past. They acknowledge their experiences and lessons learned, but they don't live in nostalgia. They make the most of today. Aging does not mean the end of fulfillment. It means evolving into new possibilities. No matter your age, there is still room for growth, connection, and joy. If this message resonates with you, please like, share, and subscribe. And tell me, what is one thing you've learned about aging? Let's continue this conversation in the comments below.